What's up, fellas? It's your main man back on the scene with another video. Did Battlestar Galactica rip off Star Wars? And I remember when this occurred at the time. I was in the 8th grade, and at the time, I believe that it was a punk move by George Lucas, because there's nothing unique about Star Wars. I felt that Luke Skywalker was probably based off of Flash Gordon, Buck Rodgers. The story arc is different. The Star Wars is more like World War II in space. And Battlestar Galactica is more like Noah's Ark in space. With, some battles and all that stuff, space battles. It's basically Noah's Ark. Mankind surviving the big storm by the Lord. So I felt it was a punk move. Like, you're not the only one who made a science fiction franchise. So let's check this out. Two of the most influential science fiction franchises in the 1970s went head to head in the courts when George Lucas, Star Wars, sued Battlestar Galactica in 1978. And here's how the court case ended. The legal dispute between Star Wars and BSG started just as George Lucas' movie began spawning a billion-dollar franchise that continues to dominate pop culture landscape to this day, which they have fallen out big time since Disney took over and did the Force is Female, which I'm going to do another video on why rebranding is bad. Battlestar Galactica was less successful than Star Wars, and the legal dispute lasted for longer than the lifespan of the TV show and its 1980 spinoff, which was terrible because it was cheap. Never make a cheap show. If you're going to make a show, make the goddamn show. Don't play around with it. At the heart of the legal battle between Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica was a dispute over plagiarism and a feud between George Lucas and a former employee. Plagiarism was the main complaint, but it's interesting to note that both Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica stole from classic sci-fi. This fact didn't escape the lawyers defending BSG against Fox and George Lucas in a court case that would expose just how indebted Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica were to the classic sci-fi fiction serials of the 1930s, but also honored how they were both moving the genre forward. It's just like I said, you can't tell me that Star Wars did not borrow from Buck Rodgers and Flash Gordon. You can't tell me that. My pops watched both of those shows. I used to watch them with my father. And this poster here, that's the first thing that came to my mind was Flash Gordon. But George punk ass felt that he could sue somebody for something that he didn't create the genre. Get out of here with that. The connection between Battlestar Galactica and Star Wars is John Dykstra, a VFX artist who worked on both iconic science fiction franchises. Dykstra had been recommended to George Lucas by the legendary VFX supervisor Douglas Trumbull, who previously worked on Stanley Kubrick's sci-fi masterpiece 2001: A Space Odyssey. Sadly, Dykstra and Lucas had a strained working relationship, which led to the former being released from his first Star Wars movie after principal filming was completed. So they bumped heads. So you can see where it's coming from. From there, Dykstra went on to supervise the special effects for the feature-length pilot for the original Battlestar Galactica series. I remember when that came out, and again, when they mentioned the lawsuits, I'm like, man, shut the F up, man. You're not the only one who can make a sci-fi franchise. Shut up. I like both. I didn't see how they competed. Well, everything's going to compete, but I didn't see how they were related. Having been let go from George Lucas Industrial Light and Magic, John Dykstra founded his own visual effects company, Apogee Incorporated. This company hired several staff members from ILM, including concept artist Ralph McQuarrie, who all worked on BSG's movie-length pilot scheduled for broadcast on ABC in fall 1978. That was like the biggest thing on TV back then, man. That's all we talked about in school was Battlestar Galactica. It was like we call it like Star Wars for TV, which we were happy to get, attracting the attention of 20th Century Fox and George Lucas. Fox and George Lucas Battlestar copyright suit explained. Let's see what old punk ass has to say about it. In June 1978, 20th Century Fox had submitted a lawsuit to the court citing plagiarism and copyright infringement. Fox and their co-plaintiff, Lucasfilm Ltd., believed that BSG had significantly plagiarized George Lucas' are you kidding me? Blockbuster movie and making their TV show. It's true that the success of Star Wars created an appetite for similar sci-fi epics, and George Lucas was reportedly given a copy of the BSG pilot script in 1977 as a courtesy. However, Gene A. Larson insists that he first conceived Battlestar Galactica in the late 1960s. Despite this, the Fox lawsuit cited 34 ideas that were apparently stolen from George Lucas' 1977 movie. Court documents via film suits relating to the 1982 appeal of the case submitted by 20th Century Fox summarized the original case, highlighting 13 of the 34 similarities that Fox found between Glenn A. Larson's Battlestar Galactica and George Lucas' Star Wars. Among these similarities was a heroine who was imprisoned by the totalitarian forces. A scene where musical entertainment is offered by bizarre, non-human creatures. What? Fox also stated that Star Wars and BSG both climaxed with an attack by a Democratic fighter pilots on the totalitarian headquarters. Something which could also be said about any World War II movie involving American and Royal Air Force. Yeah, Star Wars is basically World War II in space. Again, I don't see the similarities that they're speaking of. What lent weight to Fox and George Lucas' lawsuit was the presentation of Battlestar Galactica's technology, which bore similarities to the look and tech used in Star Wars. Did he have a patent on something? Like what? I mean, didn't 2001 Space Odyssey have a spaceship? Did they steal that? Fox stated that vehicles and BSG were like rebel ships and Star Wars, made to look used and old, contrary to the stereotypical sleek new appearance of space-age equipment. As John Dykstra and his team had worked on the designs and effects of Star Wars, it's hardly surprising that the creative vision transferred over to their work in BSG. You don't own that. Unless you had a patent on a specific technology, a computer chip or something like that, I don't get it. I mean, I didn't see it then, and I'm still not seeing it. I've read other stuff. In the making of Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, J.W. Rinsler, George Lucas, maintains that the Battlestar Galactica, that he took Battlestar Galactica to court because it spoiled the TV market for a potential Star Wars show. Dude, you don't own the goddamn TV, man. This is punk stuff. Compete, fool. Stop acting like a biatch. However, it's also suggested that Lucas was upset that John Dykstra used the techniques he pioneered for Star Wars while working for BSG. You don't own it. See, I don't see anything about a patent. Did he have a patent for that? In pioneering these new camera techniques, Dykstra had created a wedge between him and Lucas, who was displeased that these technical innovations were delaying the production of his movie. The BSG court case was rumbling on while production began on Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back, and it's telling that Lucas didn't invite Dykstra back to the sequel. As a young filmmaker who didn't quite appreciate just how huge and influential his creation would become, it's understandable that George Lucas may have felt slighted by Dykstra using similar techniques on BSG. Given the fine line between plagiarism and adhering to a similar genre tropes, it's surely that similar techniques used by Dykstra and his Star Wars colleagues that really inspired Fox's lawsuit against Battlestar Galactica. I don't see plagiarism here. This is almost over. In court, Universal countered that George Lucas' Star Wars had borrowed from several science fiction ideas from their own licensed works. Universal's lawyers submitted a videotape montage of prior science fiction works, presumably included the studio's 1930s theatrical science fiction serials. Here we go. Buck Rodgers and Flash Gordon. Both were played by, what's his name, Buster Keaton? I think he played both of these guys. I didn't realize it when I was a kid. To which Star Wars owes a debt. Both of these serials were also battles for good and evil in space, highlighting that Star Wars was particularly unique in its central struggle. What was more damning was that Universal also cited similarities between Star Wars R2-D2 and the friendly robot drones from Douglas Trumbull's Silent Running. Here we go. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, there's going to be similarities between everything. Just like certain genres of music are going to sound alike because it's the same genre. You don't own that. The court deemed that similarities between the Battlestar Galactica story and the story of Rebel Alliance's struggle against the Empire and Star Wars weren't plagiarism. They rejected Fox and Lucas' case, stating that BSG and Star Wars were only similar on the most general level of intellectual abstraction. Exactly. That's how I felt when I was a kid. Not those exact words, because I was just a kid. But yeah, I felt they're just similar because it's the same genre. Yeah, I'm going to hold to this. That was a punk move, but I get it. You don't want to have to compete. It was a disappointing result for the studio, who took their case to the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit Appeal, sided with Fox, stated that their arguments do, in fact, raise genuine issues of material fact as to whether Star Wars, I'm losing my case, genuine issues of material fact as to whether only the Star Wars idea of the expression of the idea was copied. In January 1983, the Court of Appeals reversed the initial decision to throw out Fox's case, and remanded it for trial. This must be a bitter pill for Universal to swallow. That's a bullshit decision, as the decision was made nearly 3 years after the cancellation of Battlestar Galactica in 1980. The fact that the legal disputes had lasted for longer than the original BSG ever did may have been behind the decision to settle the case out of court, meaning that it's never been entirely clear who, if anyone, was in wrong. Ultimately, Star Wars versus BSG legal dispute served to place both properties within an extensive canon of hugely influential science fiction, and its canon which continues to resonate 40 years after the legal dispute was resolved. I'll tell you, that was the most bullshit case. Because if that's the case, then using their logic, which was already pointed out in the article, they should have sued them for stealing from Buck Rodgers and Flash Gordon. Because you can't tell me that Luke Skywalker wasn't based on these two guys right here, especially Flash Gordon. I don't see no comments on here. Drop a comment below. Let me know what you think. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you brothers in the next video.